Greetings, I'm Makia Moody, Senior Manager with La Piana Consulting, and I am thrilled to be partnering with the Greater New Orleans Foundation on this series, Better Together, Catalyzing Impact through Strategic Partnerships and Restructuring. We're going to focus on understanding strategic partnerships, restructuring, and mergers. And the way that we are going to do that is by chunking the content in 3 distinct segments as a prelude to the cohort sessions that GNOF is going to be hosting. Segment 1 will focus on the collaborative map. Segment 2, the strategic restructuring process from assessment to integration. And segment 3 will be like a fireside chat with Joyce Bracey from CADA and Nicole Barnes from Jericho Road to hear about their experiences going through a strategic restructuring. I encourage you to ensure that you have been able to access all 3 of the segments in order to really benefit from the information that's being provided. So as I said, my name is Makia Moody, and I used to live in New Orleans back in 2010 through 2016. And so that's part of the reason that I'm so elated to be partnering with GNOF on this series. I've spent 18 years working in the nonprofit sector in various roles. This is a little bit about me. I spent 6.5 years living in New Orleans and bring 18 years of experience in the nonprofit sector to the work that I am currently doing. The objective of today's session is to understand the universe of partnerships and strategic restructuring options available. And so I'll be walking through the collaborative map and providing insight into the myriad ways that organizations can partner and collaborate for greater impact. You might be asking, why is this important now? So it's important to be realistic about the future and adapt. If anything, COVID-19 has shown organizations that there's a requirement to be agile and to be prepared for the unknown. It's also valuable to consider partnerships and strategic restructuring because the immediate future you have to be prepared for, and you're able to potentially accelerate the impact that you can have by doing it together through collaboration. It's also helpful to understand the different options that are possible depending on what you want to achieve through a collaboration or a partnership to help inform your decision making. There may be different questions that you would ask if you were considering a merger versus administrative consolidation. And last, hopefully throughout this conversation, you will be able to take away key insights that will inform and prepare you as you consider what partnership opportunities are available to you. La Piana Consulting is a national management consultancy that has been supporting the social sector since 1998. This is a snapshot of a number of the books that we have developed in order to help nonprofits better support their efforts through strategic planning and strategy development, business planning, and mergers and collaborations. So what is strategic restructuring? Very simply, it's a collaborative strategy that uses partnerships to enhance mission attainment. You can think of this as 1 + 1 = 3, and that there's really some economies of scale and extra benefit when organizations consider strategic restructuring. What is it that we're really talking about when we say strategic restructuring? Essentially, we're talking about partnership. We're talking about organizations that may have shared goals that are able to collaborate in order to expand their reach or their growth. It's cross-pollination of ideas, it's a requirement for teamwork, and it usually leads to greater success if there's mission complementarity and a clear path forward for how you want to leverage the strategic restructuring that you might choose. Other considerations for why you might think about partnering, and I want to give you a moment to reflect on this slide. The question is, since you've come to this webinar, you must have an inkling of insight or curiosity about the power of strategic restructuring. So what's your motivating factor? Why is it that you might be considering strategic restructuring right now? If the thought has come to you, take a moment to write it down. So what we've been seeing in the field as we think about the increased energy related to strategic restructuring is that usually it's related to a strategic pursuit. So organization A and organization B realize that if they are to combine their forces and their energies and their resources and their talent, that they may be able to hit the bullseye with greater precision because they've been able to harness additional resources. Another consideration might be market opportunities. For example, if you think about the changes that have been occurring within our landscape, you could think of the gig economy, for example, as an analogy within the corporate space. Uber, Lyft, a whole host of other companies has really changed the way that we operate when it comes to transportation. Some of those same market opportunities exist within the social sector as you think about human care services and how there have had to be developments in that area. And so there may be a specific market opportunity that is encouraging organizations to consider strategic restructuring. Leadership challenges. So in some instances, strategic restructuring is seen as a benefit if there is going to be a leadership transition at an organization. And I encourage you to listen to segment 3, where Nicole and Joyce speak about their experiences with strategic restructuring, because a leadership transition was one element for one of their stories. Board fatigue, thinking about how, the same way that you would be leveraging the additional collective energy of staff at an organization, if your board is getting tired, it may be a benefit to consider strategic restructuring in order to expand your board. These other elements, I believe, are rather self-explanatory, but thinking about community impact, if you think back to the definition that I gave about strategic restructuring, it's about doing more for your mission. And ultimately, missions are usually about the communities that you're serving and the communities that you are impacting. And so strategic restructuring can be an opportunity to further your impact within the community. And the last thing that I'll say about considerations is that each organization is different. You're all special in your own way, though there are similarities and complementarities. And so your reason for considering a strategic restructuring may be completely different and not even reflected on this slide, but it's important for you to think about what the motivating factor is as you are considering strategic restructuring. There is plenty that is happening nationally as we think about strategic restructuring and the increase that our firm has seen. So partnerships as competitive strategy has been a fundamental belief of La Piana Consulting. Our work began by helping to provide insight and guidance to nonprofits back in 1998 that could leverage strategic collaborations for greater impact. And so partnerships can always be a competitive strategy because ultimately you want to be able to do more by joining forces and by sharing resources and really being able to accelerate the impact that you're having alone. You can go further, faster together. Increased cross-sector interest and activity. We've been seeing recently more opportunities where organizations that are in different sectors, so let's say, for example, perhaps human services and environmental justice. There may be opportunities where there's some through line or thread where these two organizations are seeing an opportunity to collaborate and figure out if there's a potential for them to align in some meaningful way that's going to ultimately drive their mission and their impact more strategically and more targeted. There's also increased interest among national organizations. Big Brother, Big Sister of America comes to mind. They launched an effort last year to think about strategic restructuring within their network. So where can they leverage economies of scale between mentor sites that are in close proximity geographically? Where can there be opportunities for shared services, et cetera? And so there's plenty of, I would say, examples within the national organization footprint. YMCA, YWCA, United Way. There's been a whole host of federated organizations that have also thought about how strategic restructuring could be part of their strategic thinking and planning as they try to drive towards greater impact. The increased interest in administrative consolidation is, I believe, due to recognizing that there are some investments that organizations need to make in their back office, whether it's human resources or IT or operations or finance, and that it makes sense to not have to reduplicate all of those services if there could be a hub or an entity that is going to be that backbone support for multiple organizations that need accounting services, that need a human resources infrastructure. So instead of duplicating those services across multiple organizations, having an administrative consolidation where there is a one-stop shop for some of those services has been really increasing as far as how many administrative consolidations we've been seeing with our clients over the last few years. Funder interest in multi-organization partnerships or mergers. Sometimes there's organizations that have a pulse on the number of redundancies or duplication in organizations across a specific geographic footprint. And funders may be that spark that lights a fire for like-minded organizations to say, you're complementary in these 3 ways. I'm providing investment dollars and grant dollars to you for you to do this program, which is very similar to this program 2 zip codes away. Is there an opportunity for you to consider how you might be able to partner in order to have greater impact and efficacy in the work that you're doing? And finally, the last trend is that partnerships could be an antidote to help organizations weather the economic storm and the impact of this current pandemic. We know from data from independent sector that nationally, 83% of organizations have experienced reduction in revenues due to the pandemic. We also know that from the state of nonprofits in Southeast Louisiana, the impact of COVID-19, a study commissioned by GNOF and the University of New Orleans, that 43% of nonprofits in the region are on the front lines of responding to the pandemic, and nearly 3/4 of them have been impacted financially, whether that's fee-for-service programs that have dwindled, or canceled fundraisers, or a shrink in participation across the board. And so as you think about the current trends that are at play that might inspire you to think about a strategic restructuring, these are 6 different ways that other trends are at play across the country that may have relevance and resonance for you in Southeast Louisiana. So this is the collaborative map, which reflects myriad ways that organizations can partner together in order to accelerate their mission impact. And I want to give you a moment to just take in the collaborative map, the 3 different areas of collaboration, alliance, and strategic restructuring. And as you are taking in the types of partnerships that are reflected here, I want you to think about what your motivation is, which you wrote down earlier. What is your motivation for exploring a strategic restructuring? What are the desired outcomes as you think about why you might want to partner with another organization in a more intentional way? And please make note of that as well, because we will come back to it. Okay, so the collaborative map is a visual depiction of about 12 different flavors for strategic restructuring and strategic partnerships. And so I will begin by simply saying that we're going to walk through each circle of the collaborative map momentarily, but want to just kind of level set for what we are looking at. So collaboration, the green outer ring, is the most informal way to partner with organizations and across organizations. It doesn't require any change to the corporate structure of organizations to engage in joint advocacy, coordinated action, collaborative learning, or networks. The center blue ring, alliances, is more formalized in some instances and provides a deeper level of partnership for organizations. And then within the center of this bullseye, strategic restructuring, that is the most integrative part or way for organizations to collaborate and partner. It requires changes to your governance model. It requires changes to your corporate structure. It may require that an organization is sunsetting or dissolving, and then another one is being birthed in its place. And so the most transformative change when thinking about the collaborative map is in the center of this bullseye. So with collaboration, this is an opportunity for organizations to think about how they want to stick their toe into the water to see if the temperature is good for partnering with other entities. And so there's 4 options here with collaboration, which are coordinated action. So in thinking about coordinated action, This is where organizations might coordinate their planning for a particular service provision. They might co-sponsor an event. They might pool resources or share assets or use each other's areas of expertise in order to deliver on whatever that desired outcome is for their partnership. Joint advocacy is working to change policy either regionally or nationally. And this is typically when organizations have a shared destination that they are trying to reach, where there is a policy change that needs to happen. So you could think about ballot measures and how ballot measures get the traction that they do, and how organizations decide to sign on to say this is a ballot measure that we want to support. The pursuit of marriage equality, for example, saw many groups and individuals that were engaging in joint advocacy in order to move that issue. Collaborative learning is exactly what GNOF is so uniquely skilled at doing. So thinking about the learning networks that are created and fortified through the nonprofit leadership and effectiveness work. Collaborative learning is essentially learning communities or capacity building. So there may be a shared interest in a particular topic. Let's say arts organizations that are looking for how to protect their business models amidst COVID-19. There may be a collaborative learning opportunity where arts organizations come together to share their insights, do some collective problem solving, etc. And then the last one here is networks, where individuals and groups might be working together to create social change. It usually requires a formal commitment to participate and maybe share information or share data, but there is a glue that is, maybe not glue, there might be a connective tissue when you are part of a network, that there are shared values and shared expectations, and yet it's still simply sharing. There isn't a significant change. There isn't a change at all related to an organization's autonomy. And typically collaboration, these four areas of coordinated action, joint advocacy, collaborative learning, and network are typically not a permanent organizational commitment. They may be time bound in some way. But ultimately, collaboration is when two or more organizations are sharing information or working together towards a common end. As we shift to alliances, there is a deeper dive on the way that organizations work together in order to reach those desired outcomes. So I'll keep mentioning desired outcomes because knowing your why when you are thinking about strategic restructuring is critically important. And so if you are going to form an alliance, you want to ensure that organization A and organization B are actually moving in the same direction, that you are merging on the highway seamlessly and together, and that there's some complementarity in what you're pursuing. So alliances are a type of strategic restructuring that entails an ongoing relationship with two or more organizations that have been established to increase administrative efficiency or to further your programmatic ends. And so this could involve transferring or combining resources, services, or programs. It could also involve a partial or total change in the locus of control of one or more of the partner organizations. So you'll recall that I said with the green ring, there is no shift in an organization's autonomy as an organization. However, within this blue ring, there may be some expectations and changes related to the locus of control and decision-making. So let's begin with administrative consolidation. This is a strategic restructuring that involves sharing, exchanging, or contracting of administrative functions to increase administrative efficiency of one or more of the organizations. And there's not a change in the corporate structure. So it might be that services are being shared or transferred in order for there to be some significant gain by having the administrative efficiency that is going to be shepherded by one of the organizations. Fiscal sponsorship is a formal arrangement in which a 501c3 public charity might sponsor a project that might lack exempt status, tax exempt status. And so this enables the sponsored nonprofit to seek grants and solicit tax deductible donations under the fiscal sponsor's exempt status. And so this can be helpful because it is quite the process to perhaps get your tax exempt status. And so in the interim, fiscal sponsorship can be an answer to that dilemma. Joint programming is strategic restructuring that involves the joint launch and management of one or more programs. There's no change in corporate structure, and there is clarity about what it is that the programs need to be achieving. So you are combining resources and brain power in order to deliver unified programming. And so there has to be a shared destination for that programming. Affinity groups are very common. Think about fraternities and sororities or other organizations or groups that have a shared or common goal. Coalitions, consortiums, and associations are alliances for combined action. So there may be a targeted focus where multiple organizations are coming together to say that they support a specific end or a specific goal. This chart reflects some examples of administrative collaboration and consolidation. And so I mentioned earlier that there are multiple ways for organizations to share, exchange, contract for services from other organizations. Thinking about IT is generally an expensive endeavor in order, depending on the size of your organization, to have the right infrastructure to support your data and information technology needs. And so when thinking about the benefit of administrative consolidation, there could be a shared database with like-minded organizations. There could be shared staff across a subset of small organizations. Maybe there's even a common help desk. But this is really an example of the different ways that organizations can plug in to access resources without, I would say, paying full price for those resources, because the costs are then distributed amongst the number of organizations that are benefiting from sharing those resources. And so this chart just reflects a number of ways that administrative collaboration and consolidation can work to further support organizations as they're thinking about how to maximize their impact and really leverage the resources that they have. So this is the destination, the final stop with strategic restructuring at the center of this bullseye. And joint venture corporations, including managed service organizations, parent subsidiary structure, or merger and acquisition, each of these represent the greatest level of integration that requires a change in corporate structure and decision-making. So these three options entail the creation or dissolution of one or more organizations. So you can think of this bullseye, the center of this bullseye, being a reflection of something is ending and something else is beginning. There will be this transformation, this change related to decision-making and the corporate structure of the entities that are involved. So a joint venture corporation entails the creation of a new organization that furthers a specific administrative or programmatic end. Partner organizations share governance of a new entity, which includes management service organizations. More narrowly defined, a joint venture is a separate legal entity formed by two or more parties to undertake economic activity together. So what does that mean? It means that there could be the possibility, let's say that 4 youth development organizations in New Orleans are also providing workforce development training. And a joint venture corporation possibly could be if those youth development organizations were to establish a separate entity that was going to be their job placement center. So the youth that are in their programming are also being connected to job opportunities and workforce development. And if that was a separate entity that was created in order for there to be some economic activity, for there to be some real clear, goals that are achieved through their programmatic work, then that would be an example of a joint venture corporation. The separate entity could be created as a partnership, a limited liability company or corporation, either for-profit or nonprofit. And so this is where I like to say that I am not an attorney. And as you think about strategic restructuring, having the insight of an attorney is really valuable and critical, because there are likely some legal implications, obviously, in thinking about creating or dissolving an organization. And so getting legal counsel, hopefully pro bono legal counsel, can be very helpful and is necessary as you are ensuring that you're crossing the T's and dotting the I's as you pursue a strategic restructuring. Parent subsidiary structure is a strategic restructuring that involves the integration of some administrative functions and programmatic services to increase administrative efficiencies and programmatic outcomes or impact. One example of a parent subsidiary structure is the merger between Race Forward and Center for Social Inclusion, which happened in 2017. Race Forward is a nonprofit that has a mission of catalyzing movement building for racial justice by developing strategies to advance racial justice in our policies, institutions, and culture. And when Race Forward united with the Center for Social Inclusion, they chose a parent subsidiary structure in order to have the subsidiary maintain some of its specific programming. There's also a publishing entity within Race Forward called Color Lines, and there's a whole different flavor for a publishing entity. And so the subsidiary structure essentially retained the autonomy in some ways for Color Lines, as well as some of the other programs that are attached to Race Forward. And then there is shared governance for the organization. And so a parent subsidiary structure can sometimes be beneficial if there are certain commitments that need to be maintained, whether it's due to funder expectations or perhaps licensing and contracting. We see parent subsidiary structure used when there are implications for licenses, particularly with health and human care service organizations. If there are licenses from the state or from other authorizing entities, that will be really challenging to let go of and then retain again under a new entity. And so sometimes the parent subsidiary structure is used in order to basically save those relationships and those licensing issues or contracts, while still being able to get the benefit of the administrative efficiencies that are expected through the parent subsidiary structure. And then the last one here is merger or acquisition, which is the full coming together of two or more organizations into one entity. And so when you think about a merger or an acquisition, it requires the dissolution of one or more of the organizations and the creation of a new merged organization. So it could be that organization A plus organization B equals organization C, or it could be that organization A plus organization B equals organization A. And that there's, through the merger, there may be, through the merger, there would be a new entity that might be developed. Through an acquisition, there might just be that the organization is being integrated into the organization that's going to retain the name and the brand of whatever's to come in the next chapter. And so these are examples of all of the ways that organizations can partner together for greater mission impact. There's not a right or wrong way to partner, depending on the circumstances of your organization and your desired motivators. Desired motivations, outcomes that you're anticipating, there may be a different path that you would choose for your organization. And so it's just important to understand that there's multiple options and to assess whether and how, which one makes the most sense for you. And so this chart is a helpful example. I keep coming back to knowing your why when you think about strategic restructuring. And so this gives you an example of if you are seeking greater integration, for example, right in the middle, and you want to increase your administrative efficiency on a large scale by creating a separate business that can provide services to multiple organizations, then you should consider creating a management service organization. And you will be able to kind of take in all of these different elements, depending on what it is that you're hoping to get on the other side of your partnership that you are exploring. So a few key reminders as we come to a close. There's more than one partnership option to meet your needs. The collaborative map is a great infographic in order to convey that point, that whether it's joint programming or joint advocacy or creating a management service organization, there's a continuum of partnerships that you can explore in order to double down on your mission, in order to really reach broader constituencies or clients or participants, et cetera. And so there's more than one flavor that you could consider as you think about strategic restructuring. I'd be remiss not to say that this process of thinking through partnerships and really being thoughtful about how you engage with other organizations doesn't take time and capacity. In segment 2 of this series, we will talk about the strategic restructuring process from assessment to integration, and that will give you more insight about some of the steps, the nuts and bolts related to really exploring partnerships in a meaningful way. And the last point, clarity of purpose is important. You need to know your why before you even consider what partnership could look like and whether or not strategic restructuring is right for you and your organization at this moment in time. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to visit GNOF's website and explore what the Nonprofit Leadership and Effectiveness team is cooking up for your benefit. If you have questions about this presentation, feel free to contact me. And I hope that you will make sure to follow the rest of this series with segment 2 and segment 3, which is going to be your hometown talent from CADA and Jericho Road sharing their reflections on their strategic restructuring processes.